Sorry for the hiatus. We are back in business. Got a real interesting conversation to be had tonight with none other than the dopest man I've ever met. And I want to actually just jump right in and get to it. We've talked about the systemic racism from the obvious side, the white versus black. We've talked about so many different aspects that have become more and more apparent with everything that we've seen in current events, but we have not addressed what's going on within our own community. And tonight we are going to have a conversation in 2020 between a father and a son that talks about how we have set ourselves back for so many years. And I'm praying that a lot of people that don't look like us join tonight and have this conversation with us, because it will give them a greater understanding of how broken of a people we are. So, without further ado, I want to invite, like I said, the dopest man I've ever met, and that's none other than my father, Richard Holmes. Brief background, other than the obvious, he's dad. I'm an only child. He's my superhero and best friend. And that's rare even at this age. I'm 40. He will be 70. I'm telling you that he'll be 70 in April next year. But even now, we have multiple conversations weekly, in depth sometimes casual. But we basically build off of each other, and we uplift each other, we pray for each other, and we continue to hold each other accountable. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. But he's a very accomplished man. He retired as vice president of one of the largest banks in the country, doing private wealth, and just a genius at what he did. And it was all because he started in the ground floor and just obtained knowledge, building it up through the industry itself. And everything I know, mostly everything I know, I learned from his fatherhood. And tonight we are going to have a very serious conversation about how we have set ourselves back as a people and what we can do to overcome each other as we are trying to overcome those who are attempting to still keep us under their thumb. So, without further ado, Dad, if you are on, I thought I saw you. If you could send me a request real quick, and we're going to jump in. And tonight, I'm tired, so I promise you we're not going to be on long. I may take my glasses off because I see the glare in my glasses reflecting. So I'm going to see if he can join with us. Thank you, sir. So, my dad's old, and I don't know if you're on your phone or your iPad, Pop, but if you're on a mobile device, just send a request. I try to get you on, but it says that you're unable to join. So if you're on a laptop, then you can't do it. You got to be on a mobile device that has a front-facing camera. Real quick, real shout out. The Adventure Hobo has just joined. New good friend of mine, just met over the weekend. Got a great travel podcast. So look him up on YouTube and Instagram. He's the Adventure Hobo, and dope cat, and got some great pictures, and doing something very interesting in life. So go follow him when you get a chance. You guys bear with me. I'm gonna see if I can walk him through it. That's funny. While we're getting him all set up, I did take a break for a little while, part holiday, and part of it was because, quite honestly, I thought we were overkilling the issue. Everybody was on it, and I think some people were starting to get desensitized to it. And it's not that it's not a subject that needs to stay in our face, but I think that we also need to take a step back and re-strategize sometimes if we're not being as effective as we want to be. Having said that, we did take a break, and this is why we're going this route today. We will continue to talk about topics that plague our community from a very unique perspective. But we did want to take a break for the holiday and just to regather, regroup. Looks like he's ready, so let's jump in. And ladies and gentlemen, the legend, my father, Richard Holmes. As soon as he accepts a request, then we can have this conversation. Hope everybody's doing well. I know here in Arizona it is hot, hot, hot. You guys be safe. Numbers are rising all over the country, so please do what you need to do to stay safe and keep yourself free from all of this foolishness that's going on around us. And real quick, November is fastly approaching. Make sure you register, look at your primaries, get your ballots in order, research all of your propositions. This is not just about the presidency. There's down ballot stuff that is probably exceedingly important because it affects our school board, it affects our local taxation, everything. So there he is.
Okay, good evening.
How you doing, old man?
Good. It took me a minute, but I got it figured out.
Oh, it's all good. It's all
I had to go. I was on a laptop and had to go to a mobile device.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Long time no see.
Yeah, what almost 24 hours now?
If that, yeah, right. So we're not gonna be labor. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. I know you and I had some precursor conversations about tonight and what we were gonna jump into. So just to get everybody on board real quick as they're joining, we were gonna discuss tonight how we have a real bad habit of getting in our own way. And when I say that, meaning within our own culture, the crab in the barrel syndrome, the brown paper bag syndrome, and all the other things. So I'm going to jump right into it and and ask you point blank, when did you first experience some of the inhibitions coming from within your own community?
That would have to be going all the way back to elementary school. Obviously, we are of a lighter hue, and there was a time when, I would say back in the mid 60s when it was "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud."
Mm-hmm.
But that's something that has historically been plaguing our people for centuries, going all the way back to slavery.
Yeah.
There was a difference in the treatment of the slaves who were of a lighter hue than the ones of a darker hue in accommodations and in work assignments, and then historically, people of a lighter hue got differential treatment.
Yeah.
And I think that manifested itself into our communities, and we developed a class system within our own community like that.
I agree.
And it's something that's been handed down from generation to generation. And I think now we're starting to see a departure from that. But it was a cultural thing that's been going on, I would say, for the last 150, 200 years. And things like that, they take time to reverse that mindset. And frankly, a lot of it was instilled in us as kids when we tend to say negative things about our own people, but then a lot of it is also influenced by the media, looking at some of the things that are how we are depicted in the media, and oftentimes we buy into those stereotypes without really getting to know people, just on face value. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Say you take your car to a black mechanic, and the work doesn't meet your satisfaction. then all of a sudden, well, I'm not going to another black mechanic because they don't know what they're doing. So we tend to paint our own people with a much broader brush when it comes to things like that. Whereas people from other cultures, we may give the benefit of a doubt more often than we give our own folks.
It's very true.
And I've seen that, with public service. We see how we treat one another, and we seem to be less tolerant and less patient of our own kind because it's been instilled in us for generations that if it's something from our own people, it must be inferior.
Wow.
And that perception of inferiority goes all the way back to slavery, and it's been handed down for generations. Because in this country, if you're black, obviously you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Something that we talked about years ago, even going back historically, is that in order to succeed in this country as a black person, you have to be twice as good.
Yeah, and sometimes to get half as much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we look at that within ourselves, and then we also look at that within other people, and our expectations of other people is that for our own folks, we have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And frankly, we're not all perfect. None of us are perfect, but we're less tolerant of mistakes made by our own folks. And then I know you mentioned something in at the outset of this conversation about the crab in the barrel syndrome, where if we see our own folks that seem to be doing better than we're doing, there's a certain degree of jealousy that kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than cheer them, I remember something that what's that guy's name? John Brian Hope said. He said, "Don't hate, congratulate."
Yeah.
If somebody is doing better, somebody is doing well, somebody has accomplished some things, you should be happy for that person because it opens the door for other people to do as well as long as they apply themselves.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah.
It would, of course, not in every single situation, but it would appear on the surface that other races seem to have this concept down about either supporting one another during their journey, working together, or like you just said, congratulating each other during their success. And it seems on the surface that we are a little bit more prominent to not get that facet outside of the generational education or lack thereof. What else do you think is a contributing factor to that?
I think it's some of it is the media, some of it is outside influences that try to divide and conquer us. There's a lot of divisiveness within our community that is brought in by outside influences.
Yeah.
And too often we buy into the divisiveness rather than coming together to try to unite against it.
No, I agree. I agree. I feel like our culture as a whole, we've embraced that misery loves company concept far better than anyone else. And I use better, loosely. Um, and I don't quite understand it. Obviously, you and I could share stories for several hours, that you and I are both aware of in the
Yeah, but
past.
we don't want to bore everybody on the call.
No, no, we don't want to do that. Um, but it's still a present thing. And I'm trying to get down to the bottom of it only because, as you can see, we are fighting a very, very hard fight. And I know you and I have had conversations just recently about how we are encouraged because it appears that there are other people who don't look like us that are fighting this fight with us with the same level of energy, with the same level of exuberance, and experiencing what could appear on the surface to be the same level of hurt for a different reason. But if we're fighting that fight together, but we're still tearing each other apart in this cultural internal civil war, we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, and I think it's time for us to move away from that. I'm really encouraged by the Black Lives Matter movement now because I think people are now understanding what it really is all about. It's that our lives and our culture have just as much value as anybody else. We're no better than anybody else, but we're not inferior to anyone else.
Right.
And our pastor yesterday in his message talked about the difference between equity and equality. And
Wow.
while we're striving for equality, but with equality comes some equity. it may not be a level playing field for everybody. Everybody may not have the same skills and abilities and gifts, but I think everybody should be entitled to a fair chance to succeed regardless.
No, I agree with that completely. That's pretty strong. Um, but having said that, what is it do you think it's going to take for Black lives to matter to Black lives?
Um, it's going to be a generational thing. I think people of my generation are encouraged by seeing what we see with the young people now. Uh, a lot of what we experienced as growing up and becoming adults and going through life didn't have the same degree of encouragement that I'm seeing now.
Yeah,
We encourage our kids to do better. We always said, and that's always been a standard, that we want our kids to have it better than we did. That's been a goal for most parents throughout the generations. But we're seeing now, what does that better mean? Does that mean better income, better home, better jobs? To me, it means a better life,
yeah,
uh, and the freedom to pursue whatever you want to pursue, and put on a level playing field with everybody else in this country, so that you are free to pursue that.
yeah. And again, I know we talk all the time, so some of this is just regurgitating our previous conversations. But for the sake of those who are listening and watching, um, we have said between us that the that progression, that higher up between generations living better than the previous generation, is in jeopardy of taking an actual hit right now because your generation worked so hard to become first, first to buy a house, first to go to college, first to do this, that, and the third. And as you were achieving your first, the people who you were raising were experiencing the fruits of your labor, the vacations and everything else. So now, as we have gotten into this age where we're starting to raise our sense of accomplishment is a little different because our bucket list is different.
Right.
And I think you're absolutely right. What defines success is no longer the things that we can't have because you guys got everything that we couldn't have and we experienced all the things that we couldn't have. And so now we're looking at life like success to me is being able to see my kids raised and be home every night. Um, Success to me is something different that you can't necessarily attach a monetary value to, which sad to say is a little bit of a conflict from the previous generation for a lot of reasons. We haven't been told no for a lot of things that we wanted to achieve, like you were. I mean, for all intents and purposes, and I'm not calling you old, but desegregation,
Call me old. I don't care.
desegregation for people who don't realize the timeline, it was in your lifetime.
It was. It was.
That was something that not only that you were alive for, but something that was not far enough along that you actually remember.
No, in fact, I can remember your mother uh, on one of her visits to Mississippi drinking from the wrong fountain.
Wow.
And this was back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So for us, the evolution of the civil rights movement that occurred then, and I guess that was the most unified time among our people. And as we started achieving levels of success, and I'm going to digress for a minute, because as we started achieving levels of success, and then we started assimilating into the dominant culture, I think a lot of people just forgot where they came from, or they felt like, I got mine, you get yours. And, and I think that is what differentiates us from a lot of other cultures. If you look at some of the other cultures where they would reach back and help one another, they would do a lot of things collectively that would benefit the community at large.
Yeah.
And we got picked off to be the first this, the first that, to get to move into this neighborhood, to get a job at this place, or things like that, where we didn't look back to see who was being left behind.
Hmm.
And I think not looking back to see who was left behind caused a bit of resentment within our communities.
Yeah.
So you look at people who didn't necessarily get the same opportunities for whatever reason, and there was some resentment, and I think that resentment is now what we talk about, where we don't encourage one another, we try to pull each other down, because there's some frustration, because there's still a lot of inequality within our communities.
Yeah.
And that inequality, that's what breeds the frustration, and then the reaction to that is not necessarily toward the people that have caused it, but uh, we go after our own brothers and sisters because they're the most convenient targets.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very strong. Very, very strong. And man, what bothers me about that is we get into this very, very strange paradigm where those who are successful by whatever their definition, um, they almost have to be apologetic. I remember watching an episode of Fresh Prince. I think we talked about that, where Carlton didn't make it into the fraternity because he wasn't black enough.
Right.
At the very, very end of it, Uncle Phil, rest in peace, was like, I'm tired of apologizing for working as hard as I did to provide this type of life for my family. It's almost like you have to choose to either stay in poverty and stay in the impoverished mindset, or be successful and be ostracized. And I don't think either one of those are viable options.
Well, and then we created a whole nother mindset around that, that if you're too successful, then you're considered a sellout.
Yeah,
And
there it is.
I'm sorry, but that does not make you a sellout because you want to provide for your family.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
So um, I look at that. We encourage our kids to get an education. We encourage our kids to go out and get a job, do try to make a better life for them. That does not make us sellouts.
No, no, I completely agree. Um, But at the end of the day, that's still, like I said, that's the paradigm that we live in. Obviously, you and I have had countless examples of where people have just kind of pushed us out and let another community stake claim to us, which they don't. And at the end of the day, I mean, we've said it all the time. Like, look, if you don't accept me, at the end of the day, I'm still black and still go through the same struggles, the same issues, the same discrimination, all of that. But now I don't have the solidarity of my own community to rely on, all because I chose to actually go through with my aspirations. And I think that's the biggest part, that is, it's not so much that we don't all have aspirations, but it's some of us that actually achieve it because we decide to wake up and work our behinds off to get
Well,
there.
I think we all have aspirations. We don't all get the same opportunities.
That's true.
And a lot of that, it's something that it's going to take time to fix. That there's no quick fix for that.
No,
Uh, it's a generational thing. I can think of people that have made the most of the opportunities that were presented to them, but I also know people that tried to take advantage of opportunities and they were cut off at the knees.
yeah.
And
And to
some things
differentiate the
you
two
can't
is,
control that.
I know, I agree. I agree completely. I agree completely. Sorry for the movement. I didn't realize that I had not fully charged my iPad, so I'm
Oh,
running a little low on battery. But I'll
no,
get
no worries.
myself a charging situation. I'm gonna switch gears real quick because we could stay there for a while. And I'm gonna get into really the weeds of this. Um, let's talk about the tough stuff. Let's talk about the father and son black conversation in order to stay alive um, in 2020 America, which is the same as 2010 America, which is the same as 20 America, 1990s America, and so on and so forth. There are some things that have changed, but the foundation is still absolutely the same, dating all the way back to when you were a kid and the conversation that you had with the 10 and 2 and the yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am officer, no ma'am officer. Um, it's an unpopular thing to say when we talk about how some people's actions will get them in a situation that turns deadly, because some people don't know how to, what I say, they don't know how to acknowledge the comma, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because just because someone like the young man in Atlanta, or some of the other people that have been murdered by police officers or just by regular people. Just because they put themselves in a situation does not necessarily mean that the crime that they've committed, if they've committed a crime, is punishable by death. But because some of us can be critical of them putting themselves in that situation in the first place, it's all of a sudden, we are automatically co-signing for the police and other people's actions to either harm their life, take their life, this, that, and the third. How can we get to a point where we can have that conversation where both sides are acknowledged and you are not considered a traitor?
Well, first of all, it's not a matter of being a traitor. It's a matter of survival. If you want to live to see another day, yes, you might have to do something that goes against your belief system. But if you get pulled over by the police and all of a sudden you've got five police officers standing around your vehicle pointing guns at you, you go ahead and comply for the minute. It's always good to just kind of repress that so you can live to fight another day.
I agree with that, obviously.
As a father, we sit down and I was laughing about this because when black fathers want to sit down and have the talk with their sons, it's not about sex.
No, it's not.
It's about survival.
Right.
These are the things you need to do because I can't be with you all the time. If you're out here by yourself, these are the things that you need to do in order for you to come home safely.
Yes.
And I know you and I, we walked through that. We had real life demonstrations of it.
Yeah.
And if we look at what's been happening here lately, particularly with the situation down in Atlanta, uh, a lot of it is just because there's a perception about people of color that is made by people who are not of color that we're all criminals, we're all dope dealers, and even though that's not true, uh, until you get to a place where you are safe, it's not an argument you want to have in the middle of the street.
Right. Absolutely. Uh,
And do I think it's right? No. Do I think it's going to change anytime soon? I hope it does. But in
yeah.
the meantime, you know, the most important thing for me as a father is for my child to come home safely. And I'm sure most other fathers like you feel the same way.
I've had the same conversation with my son, and I pray that he doesn't have to, but realistically, in the climate, if it doesn't change, I just pray that I've instilled enough in him, like you have done in me, that he will have that same conversation with his children. Because at the end of the day, the argument is that we shouldn't have to, and I don't disagree with that. We
No, we
should,
shouldn't have to, but the reality is we do have to.
we do have to. And unfortunately, in that moment and at that time, like you said, when the officers have the cuffs out, when they have the guns pointed at your head, unfortunately, that's not the time to have that debate if
No,
you want to go home that night.
right. Now, the encouraging thing is that because of all the things that have occurred over the last several months with George Floyd, with Breonna Taylor, with Ahmaud Arbery, a lot of it in plus now since everyone has a camera, we're seeing a lot of things now that we didn't see before. A lot of this stuff was just swept under the rug and we didn't know about it.
Yeah,
But now things are out in the front, and as police officers are more empowered to check their own, and I think that's going to be the big piece of it is that when police officers become more empowered and become more emboldened to check their own bad actors, I think you're going to see a change.
I agree.
Uh,
I agree.
it's been a long time coming, and that's why I said I'm encouraged now because I've seen more in the last 6 months than I've seen in the last 20 years in terms of trying to make the system more equitable for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that we don't have bad apples in our own community, but uh, I think every other community has bad apples as well. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you and I've had that conversation before, and there are a number of people, and we use the crossing the street analogy normally when we have these conversations. There are a number of people from all walks of life that if I see them coming towards me, I'm crossing the street. And that's people who look like me, and it's people who don't.
exactly.
And I've always said, for every For every suicide bomber, there's a Westboro Baptist Church, and there's a KKK. And for every KKK, you've got in our community those bad apples who are perpetuating the stereotypes that we have to deal with. It's just like the police. For every police officer that has killed an innocent person, there are dozens of police officers that are doing their job and keeping us safe. But now, like you said, they have to deal with the bad apples that represent their own community just like we do.
Yeah, unfortunately, we as a society, and I'm talking about society as a whole, we tend to paint situations with a broad brush.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you've had a bad experience with a black person, then all black people are no good.
Yeah.
And that's not the case with blacks, with Hispanics, with Asians, with whites. Uh, but that's how we're conditioned as a society. And once you've had that one bad experience, then it kind of taints your perspective for dealing with other people of that color.
Yeah. And we tend to be more forgiving um, of people who don't look like us.
Yeah, well, a lot of that is generational because we heard a lot of stuff when we were growing up about black people aren't this, black people aren't that. Again, painted with a broad brush. And one of the things that used to really bother me about that is how we are the only group of people that manage to celebrate our own ignorance.
Yeah.
Um, one
Yeah.
of one of the reasons I cannot watch Good Times
Yeah.
because Good Times is supposed to be a comedy about a family growing up in the projects, but it's mostly uh, black people hurling insults at each other,
Yeah.
and I have a real problem with that. Um, there may be some messages in there, but the way the messages are delivered, and for the average white person, if that's the only image they see on television of black people, then that's going to be their perception of black people.
Yep.
And that historically goes back to why Amos and Andy was pulled off of television back in the 1950s, because uh, that was the only black show on television, and it did not necessarily depict black people in a very positive light.
But it was
And
all we had.
it was all we had. But
Yeah.
I mean, we're at a point in life now, and I don't want to dwell on the past because I think the future is so encouraging. We've had a black president.
Yep.
The Surgeon General of the United States is a black man right now.
He
We've
sure
had
is.
black people who have been in high positions and have represented us well in a lot of different cases. Uh, when I was involved with the Urban Bankers, the CEO of American Express was a black man.
Yeah.
A lot of the CEOs of a lot of other Fortune 500 companies were people of color. And
Yeah.
what that says to me and really to young people is that if you see people like that in positions like that, then you can aspire to do that as well. And that's where I see the encouragement. Um, Again, a lot of times you don't have the same opportunities, but sometimes you have to overcome your circumstances to make those opportunities.
Absolutely.
And but then the backlash is the frustration of the people who have not been given those same opportunities or don't have someone in their life to give them the direction to go beyond their circumstances.
Yeah.
Mentoring is really, really critical. That if you can look at someone who is doing what you aspire to do and talk to them and figure out what did they do to get to where they are, uh, and they happen to look like you, makes all the difference in the world. It's a motivator.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
oftentimes, we have a tendency to want to limit ourselves because we don't see anyone who looks like us doing what we want to do.
Yeah.
But now we should be past that now.
We should. We're not, and it's on both sides of the coin.
Yeah,
Because honestly, some of the apprehension that we have about celebrating ourselves comes from the negative experiences that we have with ourselves,
yeah.
and it's crazy. I'm not going to get into that conversation because we'll be here all night with that. But we have to also stop abusing each other and then get mad when we don't trust each other.
Well, trust has always been an issue in our communities.
Amen to that.
Uh,
Amen to that.
Part of the reason that we could not pool our resources and do things collectively is because we want to know, well, who's gonna hold the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's ways you can do that, but the funny thing is we will trust other people. And I'm going to take a slight turn here and say if you have faith in the people that you're working with, and you have faith in God that God is going to work through that situation, if it's done right, and you have faith in God and believe that it's going to be all right, then you can step out and trust that person.
Yep. I think Spencer just gave you a real sentimental shout out.
Oh,
He said you were the first black successful man back in the day when he was coming up, and you gave him vision of being a black man of faith and family with some coin, and now he's doing it big. I'm
well,
super proud of Spencer and what he's doing with his family and with his life, and being a sports agent with some real talent coming up, and hopefully when all this COVID stuff dies down, Spencer's gonna be the man. And I remember growing up as teenagers, being the ones that wanted to stay away from the foolishness and actually get our heads in the right place. And I'm glad that we're living that dream now. Love you, bro.
yeah, I'm really proud of Spencer too, because he has come a long way from being a little knucklehead.
He said it, man, not me.
I know. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, just I'm gonna keep it pushing. Like I said, we're not gonna be on here all night, and it's been crazy.
Yeah, he was in
Um,
the streets. He just said it.
but you just touched on something that I wanna stay with for just a second. We as a culture, we have a real bad habit of attributing things that are successful in nature to another culture, even when we do it ourselves. You talk properly. You don't say you talk properly. They say you talk white. If you live in a certain neighborhood, then you're living with the white folks, or you living on the other side of the tracks, or you're doing stuff like the white folks. And I'm like, that's you are basically taking whatever accomplishments that we have to retain in our own community and giving it away, even when we're doing it to ourselves. How do we fix that? Because sadly, it's still going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the frustration that is being expressed by people who are not doing it. They see you doing it. In a lot of cases, they want to do it. Sometimes they don't know how. Sometimes they just don't have the right opportunities. And as a part of that frustration, they tend to lash out at things that they aspire to and don't think that they can achieve.
Yeah,
And there's nothing there's nothing that you can't achieve without that you don't put your mind to and work hard at it and just don't give up.
I completely agree.
Yeah, a lot of that is just persistence.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you said that because I want to segue in to your own personal success story. You retired
Do we
as, what'd you say?
do we have to?
You retired almost on the top of the top of the shelf, as you say.
Not really,
Um,
but
I mean, given your background, it's nothing to shake a stick at. We're not gonna talk about what your last tax return looked like. I ain't gonna get in your business like that. But anyway, you retired with business cards with letters behind your name, and you started in the mailroom.
yeah, well,
And that in itself, that's a lifetime success story. And I'm sure you had opposition, and you and I don't really talk too much about the opposition or the adversity that you had to go through. But I think for the purpose of those who are watching and listening, like you said, for anyone who doubts that you can, uh, Spencer said he wants some Vietnam stories. That's
oh
gonna be another lie, bruh.
yeah, that's gonna be a different. That's gonna be a different. Yeah,
Um,
some Vietnam stories.
can you share with us from mailroom to vice president some of the most significant adversity and opposition that you had to overcome, just for the sake of those who are watching now who may not think that what they're dealing with is insurmountable?
Uh, for me, it was just a matter of hard work, persistence, and I was blessed to have people pour into me that were in a position to pour into me. I was blessed to have some great mentors along the way, and And here again, people saw things in me that I didn't see in myself.
Amen.
And I think that's one of the things that holds us back as a people. You see things in people that you know that they don't see in themselves, and that pushes you to become more of what that helps you to become more of that. And
Hi, Mom.
say hi. There she is. Say hi.
That's funny.
Yeah, but no, I would say that you know, and seeing people that were who looked like me that were in positions that I aspired to, it basically gave me the motivation and gave me the belief that uh, you know you can do this if you work at it.
Yeah,
But I would say you know some of it was luck, some of it was timing, some of it was having people pour into me that I wasn't expecting, but you know they just kind of took to me. And it wasn't just people of color. There was some people of the other persuasion that saw some things in me and pushed me to do some things.
man, it's like you looking at my notes. I was going right there next, and I was gonna have you explain the importance of diversity. I don't mind giving a personal anecdote. I know you guys really stressed how important it was to have a diverse group of support around from birth. It was, you know, the school systems and all that. You encouraged me to have a very diverse group of friends, and then those friends turned into family, and so on and so forth. Please help those who are watching understand your perspective, not that it's law, but just your perspective on why it's so important to have a diverse group of people who support and lift you up.
Um, if you get into the corporate world, obviously the corporate world is not all black,
Yeah.
and, and most of the decision makers in the corporate world are not black.
Amen.
So, so you know you have to learn to work with people, and working with people is not exclusive to our own community. We have to learn to work with people all the way across the board.
Amen.
And I think what happens is that if you work with people long enough, you earn their respect.
Hmm.
And when you earn their respect, then you know some opportunities may come out of that.
Amen to that. Amen.
Um, you know, some funny things happened early on. Uh, I started working in the mailroom at the bank. It was a summer job after my first year of college, and somehow or another, the supervisor. And here's the funny thing: my supervisor at the time, he was an old white racist guy. Uh, I was one of the first blacks to work for him, but I did a good job. I showed up on time, did everything I was asked to do, and just kind of stayed to myself and minded my own business. And then some things happened, some opportunities came up, and he needed somebody to do something, and really didn't have anybody else to turn to, and that created an opportunity for me.
And
And
look where it landed you.
yeah, and when those opportunities come, you have to be prepared for those opportunities when they come.
Yeah.
And same thing happened. When I was working in the tax department at the bank, uh, the manager there, he saw something in me I didn't see in myself, and he gave me some projects that he. I think in one case, I think he expected me to fail, and I didn't.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, I was living and working in segregated Chicago at the time, and I didn't fail, and it created some other opportunities. And then even out here, there was always someone who was in my way, but I either managed to work around them or I had to prove myself to them. And that's one of the things that I'll stop on that one is that we as a race of people, we are constantly having to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
And not only prove ourselves in terms of our skills and abilities, but also have to prove that we belong.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes we go overboard in trying to prove that we belong.
Hmm.
And in
That's
terms of,
strong.
yeah, um, I guess at my age now, I really don't care because I don't have to prove anything to anybody. But
And we all know why.
but no, no, coming up in the corporate world, and particularly because I found myself oftentimes the only person in the room that looked like me, so I had to prove that I belonged, and which meant I had to work twice as hard. I had to put in much more effort, but I never wanted to be the one bringing up the rear.
Right.
Because that would all if he's bringing up the rear, then obviously he can't cut it with us.
Well, that's a very, very, very interesting dynamic that you brought up, real quick, because you're right. If you have to prove that you belong, then your accomplishments sometimes are half as good when they're the same, but your failures are twice as bad.
Yes.
And that is a very, very interesting concept that I think that many times we overlook in our quest to try to, like you said, prove that we belong. We strive for perfection, and then when we miss the mark, it just seems like it's worse than the regular person because we already have a bullseye on our back.
Yeah.
A very, very interesting point.
And that's not the only place we try to prove that we belong in how we dress, the cars that we drive. We want to have all the trappings of success for the benefit of others to accept us.
You are, again, right in line with my notes because I was going there about, especially because of your profession and what you do. You are not a person who needs to wear all of your money on your sleeve, but we as a culture have that really, really bad where we go into debt and into detrimental situations just to prove to folk that we got it, even when we don't.
Well,
and half the time, the people that we're trying to impress ain't paying us no attention anyway.
There was a quote that I found. I was doing some research. This is years ago. And this is a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, "If it's on your back, it's not in the bank."
Wow. And there you have it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to belabor it because what I really want to do is I want to bookmark that, and I want to come back on another session in a few weeks and really dig into that, especially tapping into your wealth of knowledge as it concerns wealth.
Don't pause on the wealth word because it ain't like that.
Yeah, sis, you're right. We confuse materialism with success, and many times the people that you see got it are the ones that don't have it at all, and the ones that look like bums are the ones that got more than you can ever imagine. I remember real quick before we get out of here. I remember one of the first times I went with you when you went to go buy a car, and you intentionally dressed down, and I was so used to you dressing up every day for either work or for church, and we went to go get a car, and you look like you cut grass for it. And I was so confused, but then as I continued to observe, I was like, it makes sense. So yeah, I want to come back if you're willing in a couple of weeks or maybe in August sometime, and I would really want to dig in to educating people about the wealth management, at least the free advice that you can give.
Okay, yeah.
Because that is something that still plagues our culture probably at a disproportional rate. And I know it bothers me to no avail because I get so tired of seeing people get into these inescapable situations all for the benefit of impressing people who ain't even paying them no attention.
Well, and that's what I call the psychology of debt.
Psychology. We will name that session the psychology of debt. I love it.
We spend money that we don't have to impress people that don't care.
Exactly. That is big. Love it. Yeah, let's take some time next month and let's dig into that. I would love to do that.
Okay. Anytime.
Cool. Any parting words? Like I said, we wouldn't go keep y'all long tonight. Any parting words?
Well, I'm going to share a story with you. You know the story. When you brought some of your friends home from college one time, and
yes,
they came to our house. They went over to my sister and my brother-in-law's house, and first thing they looked at said, "Man, y'all are rich." I said, "No, rich people don't go to work every day."
Mm-mm.
And just keep that in mind. Rich people don't go to work every day. I still go to work every day.
Mm-hmm. I got a job and work very,
But
very hard.
at the time I
You shouldn't. I mean, you
but
are old enough
after
now to
after
sit back and
45
enjoy your labor.
I shouldn't have to go to work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But no, I think two things. One, understanding, how you work for your money and where that money goes. And two, and the last thing I want to share with everybody on the call, when we go back to talking about how we are as a people, a lot of it is just learning to love yourself.
There it is. That's it.
And if you love yourself, you don't worry about somebody over here who's doing better than you or somebody who's got more than you.
Yeah.
Because uh, we're going into a generation now where, like I said, success is not being measured by material things.
Nope.
Success is being measured by fulfillment, by peace of mind. Your generation is not going to strive as hard as we do to accumulate stuff.
Yep. And you and I have had this conversation before where we say all the time that we now brag about how much we can do and how little we have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's a thing. So, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm gonna piggyback on that and just say this. I think that most of the haters, and the source of the hating comes
I'm
from.
looking at Spencer's comment.
Oh, Spencer's a nut. Um,
Yeah.
Most of the hatred comes from a place where people are, like you said, they're just dissatisfied with their own choices, and they come face to face with other people who didn't make the same bad decisions. But just because they didn't make the same bad decisions that you made doesn't mean that they didn't make their own bad decisions. Amen. And I will leave everybody with this before we get into just a couple of orders of business. Just understand that you have to learn how to be self-reliable, and it is good to have people. It's good to reach out to people to be successful, but you have to be able to stand by yourself before you can be put on a pedestal. Because if you don't know how to stand on your own and you get put on a pedestal, all you're doing is you're falling from a higher position. Period.
At the risk of turning this into political commentary, I'll just leave it at that.
And we got through the whole conversation without talking about the man in the big White House.
Yeah.
Amen.
Let's leave it at that.
Amen.
Um, like I said, learn to love yourself, and then when you love yourself, then you can love others around you. You can encourage others around you, and be happy for their success.
That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Bridgman, it's good to see you, buddy. Love you, Dad. I appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, let's get back at this in August, and we can talk about the psychology of debt.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, T. We'll talk
All
to
right.
you.
All right.
Well, that was the man, the legend, Richard Holmes. My father, one of the greatest men I've ever encountered, and not just for personal reasons, but just a wealth of knowledge. Because, like he said, people they took a chance on him, so he's just simply passing down everything that has filtered through him, and we're trying to do the same. Just pass down the same knowledge and the same life experiences and everything that have made us successful to anyone else. Real quick before we go, we are going to pick this back up. We're going to keep going. I was going to stop this, um, yeah, we are seeing results. So a couple quick orders. I want to shout out Eric Turner. He's got a brand new single out. Please go support him. He's in the thread. His handle is the real underscore Eric B Turner. Great artist. Another person that has opened doors for me personally. Great brother. Great mentor. And please go support him. Again, the real underscore Eric B Turner has got a new single out. Please go support him. Available on all media platforms. And one more time, November is coming. For those who haven't had their primary yet, pay attention. Make sure that you get your ballot. Go to the websites that describe all of your propositions, all the people running for school board, your state senators, your city council, all those people. make sure that you are voting not just for the president. The president is probably the least significant impact on you personally, but make sure that you go out and grab your ballots and get educated. Spencer's crazy. We are going to dig real deep into that in September. We're going to get real deep into the importance of voting and making sure that you guys have all the resources that you need, no matter where you are, um, to be able to make an informed decision. I don't care about your political preference. I don't care who you vote for. I do care if you use your vote wisely and don't just start checking off boxes because of the letter attached to the name or because of some type of familiarity. So we're going to get into that in September. We're going to dig real deep into being an informed voter and making sure that whatever region you or whatever state you live in, that you have all the resources that you have to make sure that you are voting and voting wisely. Again, stay safe, everybody. The numbers are rising all over the country. Please do your part to stay safe and to keep others safe. Thank everybody for jumping in. Shout out to everybody. I see you, Don, and some other people that joined. Cousin, I saw you earlier. I forgot to say hey when you said hey. You guys love on each other. Remember, again, stand on your own 2 feet when somebody else. Yeah, you're right, Dad. Dr. Harden from the NAACP will join us for that voter IG live. Love you, Spence. Love you, Trent, too. I saw you join in. Yeah, just continue to be able to stand on your own, because if you're not good for yourself, you're not good for nobody else. Make sure that you have the ability to stand up for yourself, to walk on your own 2 feet, so that way when you do get on your pedestal, because your pedestal is coming, when you do get on your pedestal, you have the ability to balance. Because if not, like I said, you're just going to fall from a higher position, and you probably will take some other folk out with you, and nobody wants that. Love you guys. Thank you guys for joining. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Take care.